Hey friends, it's Mike. Yes, another video, and that's because the weirdness is non-stop. In a video I uploaded yesterday, I asked any Q followers to comment on Trump's reversal on vaccines, and the responses were interesting in that it showed how many in a truth community still embrace the left-right paradigm and believe that some person, in this case Trump, is going to save them, the country, and the world. Too many good-intentioned people still cannot get to the next step on the staircase and understand they are props in a theater production. The governments around the world, and that includes the United States, are puppet states for the one world government. It's all an illusion to keep people fenced in so they don't wake up and walk off the reservation. Everything that goes on with our governments, media, academia, the military, etc., is all orchestrated by the Committee of 300. As an example, NATO reports into Tavistock, who reports into the committee. To illustrate, here's a clip of Leon Panetta, who was the Secretary of Defense for the Obama administration, where he is testifying in Congress and answering questions from Jeff Sessions. During this exchange, Panetta states the U.S. military does not need permission from Congress to go to war, and that the military answers to an international body, in this case the UN. Let's take a listen.
Do you think that you can act without Congress to initiate a no-fly zone in Syria without congressional approval?
You know, again, our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress. I think those are issues we would have to discuss as we decide what to do here.
Well, I'm almost breathless about that, because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and then we'll come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
No, well,
I want to just say to you, that's a big dish. Wouldn't you agree? You've served in the Congress.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that that's would be pretty breathtaking to the average American? So would you like to clarify that?
But I've also served with Republican presidents and Democratic presidents who has always reserved the right to defend this country if necessary.
But before we do this, you would seek permission of the international authorities.
If we're working with an international coalition and we're working with NATO, we would want to be able to get appropriate permissions in order to be able to do that. That's something that, you know, all of these countries would want to have some kind of legal basis on which to act.
What legal basis are you looking for? What entity?
Well, obviously, if NATO made the decision to go in, that would be one. If we developed an international coalition beyond NATO, then obviously some kind of UN security resolution would be the basis for that.
Coalition of, so you're saying NATO would give you a legal basis, and an ad hoc coalition of nations would provide a legal basis?
If we were able to put together a coalition and were able to move together, then obviously we would seek whatever legal basis we would need in order to make that justified. I mean, you know, we can't just pull them all together in a combat operation without getting the legal basis on which to act.
Who are you asking for the legal basis from?
If it's obviously, if the UN passed a security resolution as it did in Libya, we would do that. If NATO came together as we did in Bosnia, we would rely on that. So, you know, we have options here if we want to build the kind of international approach to dealing with the situation.
Well, I'm for all by having an international support, but I'm really baffled by the idea that somehow an international assembly provides a legal basis for the United States military to be deployed in combat. I don't believe it's close to being correct. They provide no legal authority. The only legal authority that's required to deploy the United States military is the Congress and the President and the law and the Constitution.
Okay, so either Jeff Sessions is completely out of the loop, or he's playing along with the game. So, for anyone that believes the military is going to save the country, that's not going to happen, because the U.S. military is owned and operated by the one world government. The President of the United States is the president of a corporation known as USA Incorporated. All presidents are on the Committee of 300's payroll. When people vote, they are simply electing those who have been selected. Trump is not an outsider. In fact, within the structure of the pyramid of power, he is at best a mid-level player. No one, and I mean no one, sits in the Oval Office that has not been placed there by the committee. And this has been the case since the Act of 1871, which created the sovereign city-state of the District of Columbia, which is a foreign international entity which runs the United States. The only person that is going to save us is us. Savior mentality is another psychological operation that keeps the masses bolted to their sofas as they believe in something that does not exist. There is no rogue element within the fake government that is going to save the day. The concept of white hats is exactly that, a concept. The government and all of its agencies and institutions have been completely co-opted. And the way this has happened is because many believe there is a vestige of decency and concern on behalf of the people and the nation. The entire system has been subverted. The way out is to wake up and stop thinking a knight in shining armor is on the horizon. Believing Trump is playing some high-stakes game, speaking in code, and that his rhetoric about backing vaccines as well as wearing a mask is some sort of reverse psychology to trip up the cabal is nonsense. I had some comments where people said he's not making the vaccines mandatory. You need to understand there is no need to make it mandatory when the overwhelming majority of people believe the COVID hoax and will voluntarily line up for the vaccine. And for those that do not, there will be restrictions and obstacles put in place that will make our lives difficult. Here's an example of what the controllers are looking to put in place. It's called COVID Pass. This is from the World Economic Forum, the very same people who are leading the Great Reset Initiative. Let's take a listen.
Rising COVID-19 infection rates pose a threat to global tourism. A new app acts as a health passport for travelers who are virus-free. Using blockchain technology, it provides an encrypted record of test results. Its creators say it could allow healthy travelers to avoid quarantine. The app could also allow sports and entertainment venues to reopen safely, as well as the global conference and exhibition industry. Thousands of summer holidays are now up in the air, following a series of COVID-19 flare-ups around the world, with trips cancelled and travelers forced to quarantine when they return home. In mid-July, the number of confirmed cases globally jumped by 1 million in just 4 days. The UK imposed a 14-day isolation on holidaymakers returning from Spain after infection rates spiked there, prompting the UK's biggest tour operator to cancel all holidays to that country. Have you read? These 4 charts show the crisis faced by airlines, and the possible way ahead. EU states agree a tech spec for national coronavirus apps to work across borders. COVID-19 contact tracing must be ethical and responsible. Here's why. After recording its first cases since April, Vietnam closed the tourist hotspot of Da Nang to tourists and evacuated 80,000 tourists from the city. Now, a new health passport app promises to restore confidence to the travel industry, which has been badly hit by the pandemic. Global tourism shrank by 97% in April, according to the United Nations World Tourism Organization. A possible solution. COVID Pass is the brainchild of one of the World Economic Forum's young global leaders, Mustafa Mokas. It also involves other YGLs across 5 continents, including Muna Abu Sulaiman and Peggy Liu. COVID Pass uses blockchain technology to store encrypted data from individual blood tests, allowing users to prove that they have tested negative for COVID-19. Unlike contact tracing apps, COVID Pass will not track users' movements. Non-mandatory contact tracing apps have met with only limited success so far due to privacy concerns. Germany, regarded as one of the most successful nations in rolling out a voluntary app, currently has only 16 million users out of 83 million citizens. Experts say at least half the population needs to use a contact tracing app to make it effective in fighting the virus. Meanwhile, governments are faced with a variety of different testing regimes to validate the health of travelers. This isn't enough to reassure tourists or health authorities, says Mocus. Mocus hopes his app, which is launching in September, will become a standardized solution for airlines, airports and border agencies, and eliminate quarantine for healthy travelers. COVID Pass could also allow hotels, cinemas, theaters, sporting and concert venues to reopen safely. Another possible use would be to help restart the worldwide conference and exhibition industry, which has contracted by 60%, at a cost of $180 billion in lost revenues and impacting 1.9 million jobs, according to the industry's global association, UFI. COVID Pass commits to mandatory carbon offsetting for each flight passenger, to preserve the environmental benefits of reduced air travel during the crisis. Coronavirus, health, COVID-19, pandemic. What is the World Economic Forum doing to manage emerging risks from COVID-19? The first global pandemic in more than 100 years, COVID-19 has spread throughout the world at an unprecedented speed. At the time of writing, 4.5 million cases have been confirmed and more than 300,000 people have died due to the virus. As countries seek to recover, some of the more long-term economic, business, environmental, societal and technological challenges and opportunities are just beginning to become visible. To help all stakeholders, communities, governments, businesses and individuals understand the emerging risks and follow-on effects generated by the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, the World Economic Forum, in collaboration with Marsh & McLennan and Zurich Insurance Group, has launched its COVID-19 Risks Outlook, a preliminary mapping and its implications, a companion for decision makers, building on the forum's annual Global Risks Report. The report reveals that the economic impact of COVID-19 is dominating companies' risks perceptions. Companies are invited to join the forum's work to help manage the identified emerging risks of COVID-19 across industries to shape a better future. Read the full COVID-19 Risks Outlook, a preliminary mapping, and its implications report here, and our impact story with further information. Hide data show text equals show greater than show.
Okay, folks, so there it is from the technocracy itself. That is the World Economic Forum. And you can see that this is what they have planned. Okay, so the next article I'm going to cover is a recent poll where the question was asked, how many people would support a national face mask mandate? Let's take a look. Okay, so this article comes from The Hill. And the title of it is, 82% of voters support a national face mask mandate. 82% of the registered voters in the July 26th through 27th survey said they'd support a national mandate to wear facial coverings, including 61% who strongly back the idea and 21% who somewhat support it. Only 18% of voters oppose a national mandate on masks. And so they have their graphic here, and you can see that 82% support, that's in purple, and then in green, oppose. The idea has bipartisan support with 93% of Democratic voters, 85% of independents, and 66% of Republicans endorsing it. The article goes on to say, the idea of a national mask mandate is supported by an overwhelming majority of voters and is less of a partisan issue than you would think. 2/3 of Republicans and over 8 in 10 independents and 9 in 10 Democrats are in favor of it. We could say that this is more propaganda. In other words, it's a fake poll with fake numbers with the intent of pushing the propaganda. That could very well be. On the other hand, when I step outside my door and I go outside and I take a look at how many people are walking around with masks, these numbers could be accurate. Now, I know there are those who have commented on my previous videos who have stated that where they live, not everybody is wearing masks. And if that's the case, that's great. But I can tell you that here in Raleigh, North Carolina, I would say 9 out of 10 people are wearing masks. And based upon other comments I have received from across the world, mask wearing is extremely prevalent. So again, if this poll is an accurate depiction and representation of what's going through people's heads, it just goes to show how many people are drinking the Kool-Aid and not critically thinking. Now I wanted to take a moment and take a look at the word therapeutics. And the reason why is because we hear Fauci using the word therapeutics. And he's using that word because it sounds softer than pharmaceuticals or drugs or vaccines. So let's take a moment and take a look at what therapeutics means. So therapeutics in medicine is the branch that deals specifically with the treatment of disease and the art and science of healing. However, in pharmacology, therapeutics accordingly refers to the use of drugs and the method of their administration in the treatment of disease. Okay, so I thought it was important to call this out. When Fauci's talking about therapeutics, he's speaking in terms of pharmacology. But the reason why he's using that term is because he wants to soften it up. And he wants to condition the minds of people to believe that this is not that bad. It's just a vaccine. We're just going to jab you a little bit. Everything's going to be all right. Okay, so it's important that we understand the language that they are using. Okay, so this is the last article I'm going to talk about. It's from CNBC. It's dated April 18th, 2020, so very early on with this whole coronavirus COVID-19 hoax. The title of the article is, Could You Get PTSD from Your Pandemic Experience? The Long-Term Mental Health Effects of Coronavirus. And so the reason why they put this out so early on is because they knew what it is that was coming down the pike, and that it was going to stress people out, it was going to make them depressed, and it was going to cause trauma. So the purpose of this article is to condition people, to get them to think in terms of it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to feel depressed. It's okay to be stressed. It's okay to feel anxious. When in fact, the very people telling you that it's normal to feel this way are the very same people who are inflicting the trauma onto the population. So I'm going to read a bit of the article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll leave the link down in the description box. Experiencing intense flashbacks, nightmares, irritability, anger, and fear? In the face of a traumatic event like the COVID-19 pandemic, it's common to feel this way. While many people associate PTSD with something like war, it's a chronic psychiatric disorder that can occur in people who have experienced or witnessed a traumatic event, such as a serious accident, terrorist attack, or a physical assault. So you can see what they're doing here. They are equating COVID-19 with a serious accident, a terrorist attack, or a physical assault. After the SARS outbreak in 2003, both healthcare workers and people who were self-quarantined exhibited symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. According to experts, the COVID-19 pandemic could have a similar effect. Even if you aren't clinically diagnosed with PTSD, you may have a strong emotional reaction to the trauma of COVID-19 that can last long after the incident. So according to Luana Marquis, clinical psychologist and associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, which is a main cog in the elite apparatus, when we think about traumatic events, it's not just what the event is, it's really your interpretation of what the event causes for you. Now, this is important wording because they are creating the interpretation. By constantly pumping out fear, they are shaping your worldview. They are shaping your interpretation of what is going on, even though what is going on is a massive psychological operation. So I'm not going to read the rest of the article. You can do that. I'll leave the link down below. But the net of it is the controllers, through their media, are shaping people's reality. They are conditioning people to think a certain way, to behave a certain way, to to act a certain way, so the controllers can keep the population contained. And what this is going to lead to, all of this depression, stress, and anxiety, it's going to lead to more pharmaceuticals. What we are going to see, if it hasn't already happened, is an exponential growth in the number of people who are going to be taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. Mark my words.
Gavi operates with great transparency, and Boris Johnson is somebody with tremendous respect for you and everything you do. He called, he said, you think you could do something maybe around the Oval Office or right by the Oval Office? I said, why not? It happens to be right behind me. As the coronavirus has shown, there are no borders. It doesn't discriminate. It's mean, it's nasty, but we're going to all take care of it together. It's great to be partnering with you. We will work hard. We will work strong. Send my regards to Boris, and good luck. Let's get the answer.